So, sir, shall I start the class, sir?
Sir, you can start the class, sir.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, one and all. So, in the last class, we were actually trying to derive an expression for the resultant pattern created on the screen due to a Fraunhofer single slit. So, I have plotted this, I have shown this graph. Actually, I did not plot, I have shown this graph, and from there I have started just trying to derive some expression for the intensity of light arrived at point P. So yesterday there was a discussion. Somebody asked me, they are not parallel rays, then why are you drawing like this? I have revised that notes and I have posted the PDF once again yesterday. So please go through it. There I have drawn a lens and also I have bent the light rays, right? So you can follow that. So that was revised, but in the PPT I did not change. Okay, so this, let me quickly go through it. Yesterday we had an opaque surface, a pair of opaque surfaces. In between there is an open portion which we are calling as a rectangular slit, and plane wavefronts having wavelength lambda are coming from the left hand side from infinity and they are illuminating the slit. According to Huygens theory, every point in between this plus d by 2 to minus d by 2 along y direction will act like a spherical source of light, a spherical wavelet, and these spherical wavelets will be traveling in all directions, and we are interested in analyzing a spherical wavelet which is coming from S and arriving at P. Whether it is because of lens or coming directly, we are not really bothered. So I have tried to write the wave, spherical wave generated at S arriving at P. So I have derived a d psi P based on the point source S which is arriving at point P. Okay. So I have derived this in the yesterday's class. I said A dy. A is the amplitude of light received per entire width of the slit or unit width of the slit. Let us suppose that this is 1 unit width. Then within this 1 unit you are getting A units. So what is dy? What is the contribution from dy width? Will be just A into dy. A is the unit width, amplitude received per unit width, and when you multiply by dy, A dy is going to give you the amplitude of light that is emitted from point source S. So e power I phi is actually representing the phase part, the oscillatory part of the wave, and we have tried to analyze this phi also. So A dy e power I phi, and in the next slide I have tried to calculate the phi, because phi is phase difference. Phase difference is related to path difference delta using the relation phi equal to 2 pi by lambda into path difference delta. And by using these triangle relations, right angle triangle, actually I have tried to prove this OD, the path difference. And there was a discussion yesterday. Some students have asked me that SP and DP, are they same? I once again repeat today, SP and DP, they are parallel lines, and SD was a perpendicular drawn to both of them. It means it is forming some kind of rectangle. Of course, other side it is not closed because of lens, it is forced to join over there. Otherwise, you can imagine it as a rectangle, right? So SD is a perpendicular, and hence the length SP as well as DP will be equal. So the wave coming from S and another wave coming from O, I also mentioned yesterday that O is the reference point, something like ideal. So with respect to O origin, we are comparing each and every wave. So we took this point as reference and we have tried to calculate the wave arriving at P due to S with respect to O. So that's what we have called as A dy e power I phi. Here phi is the phase difference, phase difference with respect to what? Because phase is angle, but phase difference means some reference must be there, some reference. So that reference point we are taking as 0. So with respect to 0, what will be the phase of the wave coming from S? That's what I was trying to calculate. So I have proved that the path difference created between both rays is just OD, because SP and DP are same. So OD from the geometry you can calculate, because it's a right angle triangle ODS, and I also proved yesterday that the angle at O, that is DOS, or angle SOD. This angle, I have proved that it is 90 minus theta. Anyway, D is at 90 degree. So the angle at S, that is OSD, angle OSD will obviously be theta. So based on this right angle triangle, you can simply calculate OD from sine theta, because if you consider sine theta here, opposite side divided by hypotenuse, hypotenuse is YMA, OS, and opposite side is OD. Obviously, OD will be equal to Y sine theta. So this is the expression for path difference created between the two rays. In the next slide, I have combined both of them, and here I have stopped yesterday. So I know that phi equal to Qy. Yesterday one girl asked me, why you are taking Q? Is there any specific importance for Q? There is no specific importance, Amma. Q is just a constant. Instead of carrying this big expression, I am trying to avoid that just by calling it as Q. There is no specific importance, no or name for Q. Just it's a simple variable, right? So 2 pi by lambda sine theta I am calling as Q. Then you can go back to the previous slide to see the path difference created. You can see here phi is equal to 2 pi by lambda y sine theta. Apart from this y, remaining term I am calling as Q. That's why my phi is equivalent to Qy, that is 2 pi by lambda y sine theta. Okay. Now with this, my d psi p is becoming a dy e power I phi, with phi written as Qy, right? So I have tried to calculate the d psi p in yesterday's class. So this d psi p is the differential disturbance created at point P, right? I'm using the subscript P only to indicate that it is happening at P. D psi is the disturbance. Of course, I cannot say the disturbance as centimeter or something, because I'm talking about light, Amma. Light is an electromagnetic wave, and we talk only about the electric field associated with the wave. I repeat, we talk only about the electric field associated with the wave. You may think that y equal to a sin phi, y equal to b cos phi, etc. are the ways to represent light waves. That was intermediate level of understanding. But here, please try to accept the fact that light is an electromagnetic wave, and it has nothing to do with centimeters or any other. Y is actually y is something like length, na? X-axis, y-axis. These are three-dimensional Cartesian coordinate system. So though we use y there, our meaning is electric field there. So y is actually representing the electric field, Amma, in intermediate notion, right? So here this T psi p is some kind of electric field, as light is an electromagnetic wave. So the electrical disturbance created at point P due to various spherical sources of electric field, that is spherical waves, is given by this expression. Please try to accept this, because this is the foundation for further exercises. That is, whether you do it with double slit or n slits, I will be using the same expression. Only limits of integration will be different, but remaining things will remain same. Okay. Okay, this is d psi p, Amma. So it is the contribution from an infinitesimal point source at point P on the screen. Okay. With this picture, I hope you can understand things much better compared to the previous. So I have taken, there is a mistake here, Amma, in the picture. It is O, it was shown as O, but please don't take it as O, as it was a picture copied from something. This is not O, Amma, this is some other point S, right? This is O, fine. So here I have taken a small differential element dy, where a point source S was sitting, and from there the spherical waves are emanating. These spherical waves, of course, they will travel in different directions, but I am interested in those rays which are traveling towards point P. I hope with this diagram you can understand. I have actually drawn 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 point sources I have shown in the picture. I mean, from minus d by 2 to plus d by 2. But in reality, there are infinitely many such point sources, point spherical sources. So all these waves would reinforce at point P, leading to some resultant intensity. In the beginning of yesterday's class, I have reminded you that you cannot discriminate between interference and diffraction, because both of them are wave phenomena. In interference also, waves superpose with each other. In diffraction also, waves superpose with each other. But the basic difference is, in interference, you can clearly say that these are the 2 point sources which are going to overlap. Young's double slit experiment or let us say our Newton's rings, we can clearly discriminate the two rays from where the light is coming, 2 points from where the light is coming. Whereas here, in the case of these point spherical sources, you cannot physically count them. There are infinitely many. That's why the superposition of secondary spherical waves, which are infinitely many, will cause the diffraction pattern, and the superposition of two individual point sources, which are easy to distinguish, will cause the interference pattern. Both are basically overlapping of waves, right? So at point P, what is going to happen? What I have to do is I have calculated the contribution from one point. Now, if I integrate from the lower limit minus d by 2 to plus d by 2, all such point sources, then I would get the resultant amplitude at P, or resultant disturbance at point P. So what I'll be doing here is, in the next slide, I'll be changing just this integration expression. I mean, I'll be taking this differential expression, I'll be integrating it from lower limit to upper limit to get the resultant pattern on the screen. I'll make a move to the next slide. See, please make any relevant chatting. Please talk other things in other groups, not in the Zoom chat, because they are diverting my attention. I request you please not to make any other discussions. Okay. Now, I am trying to calculate the resultant disturbance. Here I am using the word disturbance. Disturbance means something like amplitude. The amplitude of light received at point P. So now I'm integrating to get integrating d psi p to get the psi p. D psi p is a differential and psi p is the full function. So in order to get the full function, you must integrate this d psi p from minus d by 2 to plus d by 2, right? So as I know, d psi p is a dy e power I q by, I am simply integrating it from minus d by 2 to plus d by 2, right? As you know, a is a constant, because amplitude of light per unit width of the slit, it is not going to vary, at least with respect to y, or at least with respect to this minus d by 2 and plus d by 2. And hence a is a constant which can be pulled outside. So here what I have done is I have taken the a outside of the integral, and I have integrated from minus d by 2 to plus d by 2 e power I q by dy. And it is looking something like e power something like ax dx, integral e power ax and dx, right? So integral of e power ax is nothing but e power ax divided by a, because a is a constant, right? In a similar manner, I am taking this iq as some constant. So this constant is something like a. Of course, I am not talking about the amplitude here. I am just giving you the intermediate mathematics example, e power ax integral, right? So just like that, this constant can be taken safely to the denominator, leaving e power iqy divided by iq as the result of this integral, with upper limit plus d by 2 and lower limit minus d by 2. Here, if you are clever enough, you should ask one question. You are taking q as constant, but if you take a closer look, q is actually 2 pi by lambda sine theta. 2 pi by lambda sine theta. So q is not really constant, there is a variable theta. If you are clever enough, you should ask me that theta is there, how can you integrate? Well, let me come back to the previous slide. Please remember, in the beginning of the diffraction itself, I said the width of the slit d is comparable to the incident wavelength. Incident wavelength means lambda. You know, for visible light, it is 5000 angstrom, 6000 angstrom, something like that, right? It's of the order of micron, micrometer. So definitely this d is also of the order of same, micrometer. And remember, in Fraunhofer diffraction, the distance of screen, that is the distance of point P, is usually at infinity, because we are going to deal with plane waves, right? So the distance between this opaque screen and point P is usually very large, and for clarity, we have drawn this much as the opening of the slit, but it is in general not visible also, it is very thin, right? So in the picture, it may mislead you that this is very big, but actually it is of the order of micron. This is micron and this distance is several meters. Really, is the theta variable now? For this integration, I repeat, if you are integrating from minus d by 2 to plus d by 2, what is the value of theta that is going to vary if P is at very larger distance from the given slit? So just an exaggeration. Actually, this minus d by 2 and plus d by 2 are pretty close. They are almost at same point. So no matter whether you integrate from here to there, the theta value is not going to vary for a distant point P, right? So with that assumption, we are assuming theta to be a constant while making the integration, right? So here I can simply integrate the q, treating it as a constant. So e power iqy divided by iq, and hence if you substitute the upper limit in place of y, which is e power iq plus d by 2, and lower limit also in place of the same y, you are having e power iq plus d by 2 upper limit minus e power minus iq d by 2, which is the lower limit, divided by iq is the resultant integration value, right? In the next slide, I have shown the same expression here, but here I'll make some manipulation somewhat. Look at this. Here I have intentionally multiplied with a 2 and divided with a 2 to get this second expression. I have not done anything else, just multiplied by 2 and the divided by 2, right? There is a reason for doing like this, because if you recall the Euler's identity, e power I theta is nothing but cos theta plus I sin theta, right? Cos theta plus I sin theta. Somebody is asking me, its variation is negligible. Okay, fine. So e power I theta is cos theta plus I sin theta. Similarly, e power minus I theta is cos theta minus I sin theta, right? Just by adding these two equations, that is e power plus I theta and e power minus I theta, you can get the value of cos theta. And just by subtracting one from other, that is e power I theta minus e power minus I theta, you are going to get sine function, right? So in that way, you can get that e power I theta minus e power minus I theta by 2i as sine theta. So this square bracket term is actually representing sine theta. Theta is nothing but here qd by 2, e power I theta. So in place of theta, I am taking it as qd by 2. So this square bracket term is simply sine qd by 2, right? So this expression, I'll leave it as an exercise. Please just check it. E power I theta plus e power minus I theta and e power I theta minus e power minus I theta. You try both of them and convince yourself that this is representing sine, and the other one, the addition divided by 2 but not 2i, will give you the cos. Anyway, it will be evident to you once if you try. Fine. Now, after substituting this sine qd by 2 here, what am I going to get is 2a by q into sine qd by 2. 2a by q into sine qd by 2. And once again, one more substitution. Instead of carrying this fraction, I'll call it as alpha. Qd by 2 as alpha. Right? There is no significance for this, just for mathematical simplicity. Instead of writing this fraction, I am calling it as alpha, nothing else. Right? So this is going to be alpha. And one more thing I want to do is just I'll multiply and divide by d in both numerator and denominator. There is a reason for doing that. So 2ad divided by qd, right? And then I'll pull this 2 from numerator to the denominator. That is, I will write this 2 in the numerator as 1 by q by 2. 1 by q by 2, or in other words, qd by 2 in the denominator, right? You pay attention here. So the AD remained there, and in the denominator it was QD by 2. The 2 came from the numerator to the denominator. And why I have done this is I want to make this term look like sine alpha divided by alpha. Because if I just retain this QD, the A in the numerator and Q in the denominator separately, I can't get this alpha term. So just to make it look like sine alpha by alpha, I have manipulated this. And one more thing. You can see this AD. AD I have called as capital A. What is capital A, you may ask? Please recall, this small a is the amplitude of light falling on the slit per unit width. It means your single slit, if it is having 1 unit width, of course it's an exaggeration, let us say 1 centimeter. It won't be 1 centimeter, but just for mathematical simplicity, I am saying that A is the amplitude received per 1 centimeter. Then if there are d centimeters of slits, let us say d is some 5 centimeter for mathematical simplicity only. So what is this A into D giving you? Is it not the amplitude of light received for 5 centimeters, right? So that's what I am calling as capital A. From now onwards, this capital A will be the total amplitude received on the slit. Please remember, capital A represents the total amplitude received on the single slit. That is what capital A is. And small a is the amplitude of received light per unit width of the slit. Per unit width is small a, and on the entire slit, how much amplitude is received, that is capital A, right? And in mathematical terminology, this sin alpha by alpha is called sinc alpha, SINC, sinc function, right? Just like cos theta plus I sin theta is a cis theta, here we call this as sinc, SINC, sinc alpha. Of course, whether you know it or not, it's not a problem. Especially EC people, they'll be using it as a sinc alpha. Okay, I'll make a move to the next slide. So finally, the psi p, the resultant disturbance caused because of all these infinitesimal slits dy, 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 dy on point P is this much, A sin alpha by alpha. With alpha, you know, alpha equal to q d by 2, q d by 2, and in place of that d by 2, I can write, in place of that q, I can write 2 pi by lambda sin theta. Please recall, we have taken q is this q d by 2 means you multiply this by d by 2. So 2 gets cancelled. You are left with pi d sin theta divided by lambda. Pi d sin theta divided by lambda. That's what I have written here. Pi d sin theta divided by lambda. Okay, you can see this. Of course, I forgot. Here also I have shown the same expression. Fine. Now, our interest is not amplitude, our interest is intensity. Let me give you a simple example. Our slapping example. I like it very much. Suppose if a person slaps you, you will not say that that person slapped me with this many newtons of force, right? Whether it is a soft slap or hard slap, that's what you can say. But you cannot say that I got 10 Newton force, I got 4.5 Newton force. You cannot say that. Just like that, amplitude is not a physically observable quantity. Means if someone slaps you, you can feel the pain, but you cannot feel the force. You always feel it in terms of pain. Similarly, if light falls on your eye, you will feel not as amplitude, but as intensity of light. Whether the intensity is bright or dark, that's what you say. You will never say amplitude is higher, amplitude is smaller. You cannot physically feel the amplitude. You can only feel the amplitude through its intensity, right? So in every expression, after deriving this psi, we will go for intensity. Please recall, intensity is the square of amplitude. In intermediate, they might have taught you I is proportional to a square, or simply I equal to a square, a constant, right? So intensity we are interested. So in the next slide, I'll be calculating the intensity. So intensity of light on the screen at point P is simply mod psi p square. You may ask, why don't you take square? Why are you putting this modulus? Please remember, I have taken the psi as a complex number, complex function. So for complex functions, in order to get the real values, you should take the modulus square through psi into psi star. You know, psi star is the complex conjugate. Let me explain you. You know, z is a complex number, something like x plus iy. Z is a complex number, something like x plus iy. Then z star will be x minus iy. Means wherever you get I in that function, just you replace it with minus I. That's what you call as complex conjugate, right? So when you multiply the original complex function with its complex conjugate, you are going to get the real number, real value actually, right? So we are just multiplying a sin alpha by alpha, which is the psi p, and we are going to take the a sin alpha by alpha with star. So the complex conjugate of this thing. It may appear silly for you. Why are you taking this complex conjugate nonsense? Just you take square directly, because even after squaring also you get the same answer. But for double slit and n slit cases, this expression is not so simple, Your psi p is going to have complex terms, something like i's here, complex number I. So if you just square them, you will end up with negative intensity, which is a meaningless quantity, right? So in order to have a real positive intensity, you must take the complex conjugate and multiply with the original, right? So you take this a sin alpha by alpha, take its complex conjugate. Of course, that is also a sin alpha by alpha. And when you multiply both of them, you are going to get the intensity as a square sine square alpha by alpha square. So this is the resultant intensity on the screen. Well, one may ask, what is the use of this expression? Please recall, alpha is after all qd by 2, which we have calculated as pi d sine theta by lambda. Pi d sine theta by lambda, right? So just by varying the theta, you can get every point on the screen amount. You can get every point on the screen. That's why this alpha is indirectly having the variable theta, which can explain you the resultant intensity on the screen at any desired point. It's not just valid for P, it can be extended to any point on the screen. That is the greatness of this expression. So it tells you the entire intensities on the screen just by varying these alpha values according to theta, right? Okay. Now the next article is location of maximas and minimas. See, we have calculated the intensity expression, but unless you know where the function is going to maxima and minima, you cannot say where do I get the dark fringe, where do I get the bright fringe, etc. Right? In order to do that, we'll just calculate the maximas and minimas. That is the next slide. So in mathematics, you might have studied in intermediate second year, if you want to have a function to have an extrema, either a maxima or a minima or even a saddle point, the only thing you should take is its first order derivative with respect to the variable must be 0. Please recall, this function is I with respect to alpha. I is a function of alpha. So I will be maximum or minimum only when di by d alpha is equal to 0, right? So dip by d alpha I am taking, I'm equating to 0. So first of all, I have to take the differentiation. So you know, a square sine square alpha by alpha square is the function. As a is a constant, the amplitude received on the slate, it is not going to vary with alpha ma. So a is a constant, so I am pulling the a square outside. So it is d by d alpha of sine square alpha by alpha square. You know u by v rule. So in the denominator you can retain the alpha square, and alpha square into derivative of this minus sine square alpha into derivative of alpha square. You know this stuff, right? So just by taking the derivative of this, you can easily show that sine square alpha's derivative will be, sine square alpha by alpha square, you can treat it as x square. So x square derivative is 2x. So 2 into sine alpha by alpha, and the inner derivative is just a denominator alpha square, and alpha square into, not alpha square, it's alpha. It's just a minute. It was wrongly printed, Amma. There is no alpha square. I'll recorrect it later. Fine. So it's only alpha. So alpha into cos alpha minus sin alpha. How you got this? Because alpha into sin alpha's derivative is cos alpha minus sin alpha into alpha's derivative is 1. Because alpha's derivative with respect to alpha is 1. So you are getting only sin alpha, right? So if you just equate this term to 0, either this or that, you can get the condition where alpha gives you either maxima or minima, right? Okay. So if a product is 0, if a product of two functions is 0, let us say f of x into g of x is 0, then the immediate condition is either f of x is 0 or g of x is 0 or both of them. So either sin alpha by alpha is 0, one possibility, or this bracket term alpha cos alpha minus sin alpha by alpha is equal to 0 is the other possibility, right? So here I took the first one, sin alpha by alpha equal to 0. Anyway, alpha cannot be 0 because the denominator 0 cannot give you 0. The only possibility is sin alpha vanishing to 0. So sin alpha 0, you know the general solution for sin, it is alpha equal to plus or minus n pi, right? So alpha equal to plus or minus n pi is one possibility of alpha values. Another possibility is alpha cos alpha minus sin alpha by alpha. Actually, there is no square. We are fortunate enough that this alpha square is going to be 0. That's why we are unable to notice it, right? But it's a mistake. There is no alpha square in the denominator. It's only alpha. So this bracket term vanishing to 0. Anyway, here also alpha cannot be 0 because denominator 0 cannot give you 0. So the only possibility is alpha cos alpha minus sin alpha equal to 0. And if you pull this sin alpha to the other side, it is alpha cos alpha is equal to sin alpha, or simply alpha is equal to tan alpha. Alpha equal to tan alpha is one possibility. alpha equal to plus or minus n pi is the other possibility. In these two cases, you are going to get the extrema for this function a square sine square alpha by alpha square. Here extrema means it can be maxima or it can be minima, something like 0, right? So these are possible only at these alpha values. The first alpha is pretty clear. It is just n pi. Alpha, I know that it is a pi by lambda d sine theta. I can equate it to n pi. But this right hand side equation is a complicated one. This is called transcendental equation. So these transcendental equations cannot be solved normally. Just by plotting a graph, you can find the intersecting points of both the left hand side and right hand side, and you can get a solution for it, right? So in the next slide, I'm going to plot a graph. So please pay attention, Amma. I'm talking about the right hand side equation, that is alpha equal to tan alpha. So here how we deal with this problem is, we'll take left hand side equal to y, that is y equal to alpha, and right hand side is also equal to y, that is tan alpha is also equal to y. So both these things we are going to plot as a common variable alpha. So common variable is alpha, my x-axis is alpha. On y-axis, two graphs I am plotting. One is tan alpha, which is shown in red color, and another is y equal to alpha, which is shown as a dotted straight line. Right? Y equal to alpha is of course a straight line passing through origin, having 45-degree slope with respect to x-axis. So this dotted line is showing one solution. I mean, one equation. Another one is this red lines, you know, tan theta graph. Tan theta graph is shown like this. You all know that tan theta has got discontinuities at every pi by 2. Every odd multiple of pi by 2, whether it is plus or minus, you have got a discontinuity. Tan 90 goes to infinity. One side it is plus infinity, another side it is minus infinity. And same thing is applicable at 3 pi by 2, 5 pi by 2, 7 pi by 2, etc., etc. Right? So we will get a solution for alpha only at those points where this red line meets the dotted dark line. That is at this point. Of course, at pi by 2 it's not there. That is at this point, that is 0. And similarly on the other side, at minus 3 pi by 2, 5 pi by 2, etc., you are going to get the same solutions, right? So the points of intersection of both LHS and RHS are only alpha equal to 0, alpha equal to 3 pi by 2, 5 pi by 2, 7 pi by 2, both positive and negative, right? So I'll make a move to the next slide. So these solutions I have written over here now. Alpha square is correct. Amma, just a minute. I'm not sure. See, I treat this sine alpha by alpha whole square as x square upon, right? So x square's derivative is 2x amount. 2x means 2 into sine alpha by alpha, right? And then inner derivative is there. Okay, I'm right. Thank you for reminding me. There is another alpha which I might have joined over there. Let me go back. No, ma. This it should be alpha only. Here it is mistake. Why? Because the denominator, you take the alpha also. I mean, the whole bracket it's square, na? Okay. Thank you. Anyway, I have made a mistake, but the slide is correct. I have misinterpreted. Thank you, Sai. Okay. Anyway, this expression is good, but as far as physics is concerned, we are not really bothered about this alpha square. Why? Because it's anyway going to 0. So we are only interested in the numerator, right? And thank you for reminding me. Okay, fine. So here, alpha. So alpha values are now known, Amma. So for these alpha values, we may get a maxima or a minima, which we are not really aware of. So let's go one after the other. The first condition, alpha equal to n pi. Alpha equal to n pi was one condition, Amma. Another condition is alpha equal to 0, 3 pi by 2, 5 pi by 2, 7 pi by 2. All these odd multiples is another condition. You may ask, n pi, suddenly how come this 0 came? Of course, in that n pi, if you take n equal to 0, that also gives you the same 0. What I mean is, if you go back to the previous slide, let me go back. Please pay attention here, Amma. Sin It's not easy. Please be on the line. Please be on the line. Few minutes. No, I'm not taking it.
Sir, your voice is breaking, sir. Will you reconnect, sir? Sir, will you reconnect, sir? No, sir, your voice is breaking, sir. Sir, leave the meeting and join again, sir. You please try like that. Girls, be patient. Stay online. Sir will reconnect. Sir, you can unmute, sir.
Thank you, madam. Thank you. Am I audible now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Your voice is also clear.
ఓకే మేడం. ఇక్కడ అంటే రోటర్ ప్రాబ్లం వచ్చింది మేడం, దీంట్లో షేర్ అవ్వట్లేదు, మొబైల్ నుంచి వస్తానండి.
Oh.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. Sorry for the interruption. So we got this expression now. So after equating both y equal to tan alpha and y equal to alpha by plotting them on a graph paper, we got the intersection points. So those intersection points are this alpha equal to 3 pi by 2, 5 pi by 2, 7 pi by 2 along with 0. And we were talking about other one, that is sin alpha by alpha equal to 0, which leads to alpha equal to n pi. And here I have mentioned one thing, that n can be integers 1, 2, 3 other than 0. There is a reason for choosing like this. Of course, these two conditions will definitely give 0 in common, but I want this condition to be different from this condition. That's why I am writing n not equal to 0. In a moment, you will understand why I have taken like that. Okay, right. So here for alpha equal to 0, what happens we are going to see now. When you put alpha equal to 0 in the IP expression, IP, you know, a square sin square alpha by alpha square. Here I am taking alpha tending to 0. Why not alpha equal to 0? Because if you put alpha equal to 0 here, it is 0 divided by 0. Numerator is 0, denominator is 0. You get infinity. Means meaningless. Meaningless. I mean, intensity infinity means meaningless. It's not physically possible, right? That's why instead of putting alpha equal to 0, we are trying to analyze limiting condition. What is going to happen as we approach towards alpha equal to 0, right? So in the limiting condition, you know about the L'Hospital's rule. Whenever you have a limit, let us say limit theta tending to 0, sin theta by theta, both numerator and denominator going to 0 simultaneously, then you apply the L'Hospital's rule. L'Hospital's rule means you take the derivative of the numerator and the derivative of the denominator with respect to the same variable, then take its limit, right? Or if you remember the identity from your limits and continuity of mathematics, their limit theta tending to 0, sin theta by theta is after all 1, right? So here a square is a constant which can be pulled out of the limit. So a square times sin square alpha by alpha square, which is nothing but 1 square, right? So it is just a square amount. Okay, so at alpha equal to 0, you are going to get the answer for intensity as a square, which is going to be the maximum and maximum among all the others. As I already did the derivation, I am just revealing you that a square is the maximum one and all other values are going to be much smaller than this. That's why this a square giving alpha is what you call as primary maxima. Primary or principal maxima, chief maxima, central maxima, all these words are referring to the same alpha equal to 0 case, right? So this is the principal or primary maxima. Fine, I'll make a move to the next slide. Okay, so alpha equal to 0. Now I'm trying to interpret what is alpha equal to 0. So alpha equal to 0 means, you know, pi by lambda d sin theta. You can see alpha equal to pi by lambda d sin theta. Lambda is not 0, pi is not 0. Anyway, d cannot be 0 because if d equal to 0, there is no slit. As we know that there exists a slit, so d cannot be 0. The only possibility is sin theta tending to 0. So sin theta tending to 0 in this condition. Now please try to understand, this is the slit and from here the rays are coming like this. And the rays are making an angle theta with respect to the horizontal. So the worst case of theta can be maximum 90 degree. Light cannot go back, na? Light may bend this way, only bending but not reflecting back, right? So the worst case of theta in this case can be at most 90, right? So 0 to 90 degree Sin theta being 0 is only possible with sin 0, right? So theta equal to 0 is the only possibility, physical possible condition here. That's why we are taking theta equal to 0 here. It means the point on the screen, Amma, this is the screen, Amma. The point on the screen, which is exactly opposite to the center of the slate, will be the brightest, right? This is the brightest, Amma. I hope you can see the bands here. So these bands are representing the intensities of patches on the screen. So I'm actually referring to this portion. This is the central maxima, and the wave-like pattern on the backside of this is actually representing the sine square alpha by alpha square. Sine square alpha by alpha square graph is this. So it clearly shows that it is going to have a peak like this. Of course, I'm going to plot this graph after calculating the minima also, but just I'm revealing that this point is representing the brightest intensity. So this value is a square. The highest peak intensity is a square, right? Okay, next slide. We have calculated about maximas, central maxima, but we did not do anything about the other. I already reminded you that alpha equal to 0 is the special case of principal or central maxima, chief maxima. Now, if you exclude that alpha equal to 0, the rest, that is 3 pi by 2, 5 pi by 2, 7 pi by 2, etc., odd multiples of pi by 2 are going to give you sine square alpha by alpha square as, please remember, sine square alpha by alpha square. This is alpha. 3 pi by 2, 270. Sine 270 is minus 1. So minus 1 square is plus 1, right? So a square into 1, which is nothing but a square in the numerator. And in the denominator, alpha square is there. Na? In place of alpha square, I am writing 3 pi by 2 whole square. Similarly, for the other case with alpha equal to 5 pi by 2, same sine 5 pi by 2 may give you either plus 1 or minus 1. Anyway, square is there to save us. So square always gives you plus 1. Right? So still numerator is a square, but the denominator is 5 pi by 2 whole square, right? And third one, numerator once again will be a square, denominator will be 7 pi by 2 whole square. Just observe the series. The series is a decreasing series. It means as alpha value increases, as order increases, the terms are going to be much, much smaller. See, the principal maxima, we found the intensity as a square, Amma. Next one is a square divided by something. Please observe this, 3 pi by 2. 3 pi by 2 means roughly 3 pi is 10 by 2. So 10 by 2 means almost it's close to 5 square. So it is 25. So if the central maxima is having 1 unit intensity, then the next secondary maxima is going to have 1 by 25th of that intensity. Imagine 25 times fall in intensity. Next one is going to be something like this value divided by, of course, it's 5 now, 5 square, 7 square. Like that, the intensity is going to be drastically falling, right? So these secondary or subsidiary maximas are called as secondary and subsidiary. Secondary means they are not important, right? Why? Because their intensities are going to fall drastically, right? That's why these secondary maxima are not as bright as the central maxima. That's why if you recall this picture, I have drawn this central one with high intensity, and as you move away either this way or that way, you have seen the diminishing intensity lines. I hope you understand this. This is relatively lesser in intensity, much lesser, much lesser, and completely dark, right? Okay, so these small peaks in this picture are representing the secondary maxima. Then you may have a doubt. You said one secondary maxima, but why this many symmetric maximas are coming over there? Let me explain you that also. As you know, alpha is giving you plus or minus, right? Alpha positive means, alpha is nothing but sine theta, pi by lambda d sine theta. Na? So alpha is indirectly representing sine theta. So sine theta sometimes becoming positive, sometimes becoming negative, right? So they are going to give you plus theta and minus theta as solutions. Right? So alpha is becoming plus or minus means you are going to create a positive theta as well as negative theta, which satisfies the same thing. So the positive thetas are the angles in the first quadrant. If you imagine this as XY plane, so in the first quadrant, whatever thetas that you get are positive theta summa. Whereas in the fourth quadrant, which is the lower of the diagram, lower side of the diagram, so you are going to get the same thetas, which are of course representing the negative thetas. Theta positive means this side, theta negative means lower side, right? So these thetas are symmetric. And that's why you are going to get a symmetric pattern about the center. You look at the central pattern about the center, you got one bright maxima above, the same intensity bright maxima below. You got another secondary maxima here, another identical symmetric secondary maxima here. So the pattern is entirely symmetric about the center of the alpha, that is alpha equal to 0, right? So this is going to describe you how the pattern will be. And I have something more to do, but because of my interruption, I'll quickly conclude. Please be online. So this is regarding others. And I have actually calculated two things, principal maxima and secondary maxima. Now it is time to calculate the other, that is minima, right? So I have taken alpha equal to n pi condition, and I said I'll keep the condition separately. This condition excluding n equal to 0, I have considered. So when n is not equal to 0, you are going to have 1, 2, 3, etc. What is wrong if n equal to 0? At n equal to 0, it is giving you principal maxima. So no question of minima. So I have to exclude that condition, right? That's why I have taken n equal to 1, 2, 3, etc. Now, you remember sine alpha by alpha with alpha tending to any n pi, let us say pi, 2 pi, 3 pi, all sine pi's, sine pi 0, sine 2 pi 0, 3 pi 0, 4 pi 0, any multiple of pi, whether it is odd or even of pi, sine is going to give you 0, right? So all these terms are forcing the numerator to become 0 because alpha, sine square alpha by alpha square, we are actually trying to find out. So sine square alpha by alpha square for alpha being any integer multiple of pi is going to give you just 0, right? Intensity is becoming 0, my intensity is vanishing, means it is a minimum. In earlier cases, we got intensities a square by something much bigger, something much bigger, etc. But here in this case, we are going to get just intensity as 0. So these are the minimas caused due to single slit, right? Anyway, alpha I am going to substitute as pi d sine theta by lambda, and it is going to give me, I can just equate it to plus or minus n pi. It is going to give me sine theta. You can see here, sine theta equal to pi gone on both sides. You are left with the n lambda by d, with sine theta taking positive and negative values. I repeat, sine theta equal to plus or minus n lambda by d, with sine theta taking both positive and negative values symmetrically, right? So when you put n equal to 1, it is going to give you first minima. When you put n equal to 2, you are going to get the second, n equal to 3, third, and so on, right? So this condition is going to describe you minimas, and also minimas are also symmetrically distributed. Why? Because if you get plus lambda by d for first minima, there is a symmetric minus lambda by d which is giving you minus theta. Please try to understand. Sine theta equal to plus lambda by d is one condition. The same sine theta equal to minus lambda by d is another condition. So they are going to give you plus theta and minus theta, right? So symmetrically you are going to have once again maximas and minimas. So in between two maximas, please observe, this is the location of maxima, the brightest point, and this is the location of another brightest point, but of course weaker in intensity. So in between this maxima and this maxima, you have got a dark portion, right? So there is a valley here on this graph which is representing the darkest point, and these darkest points are called minimas. I hope you can understand here. This is one minima, this is another minima, etc. And symmetrically, if you look at the central maxima, one side one minima, another side another minima. So this is representing the first minima, first minima. So in between two first minimas, you have the principal central maximum. I repeat, in between the first minimas, pair of first minimas, you are going to have the principal maxima. In the exam, sometimes they ask, calculate the width of principal maxima. Calculate the width of principal maxima. Means you have to find out the gap between first minima on one side and first minima on the other side. This gap is going to be the extent. This gap is going to be the extent of principal maxima over, the region over which it is spread out, right? So this completes the maxima and minima. And finally, I'll show you the graph. So this is the resultant intensity distribution due to Fraunhofer single slit. So you can see here the intensity is brightest. Sine square alpha by alpha square has got a square here, and here this is the first minima. This value is pi equal to 0. I'm sorry, pi equal to, I mean, sine alpha equal to n pi we have taken. Na? So n equal to 1 is this case. Similarly, n equal to 1 this case. And n equal to 2 is this case. N equal to 2 is another case. N equal to 3, n equal to 4, etc. These are representing the minimas. And this pink line is actually representing the first minima. I mean, first secondary maxima. First secondary maxima. It's only comparison sake, as I already said, if the intensity at the central maxima is A, it is going to be just a 0.047 A. So the intensity is minuscule, very small. It's not even almost 5%, less than 5%, less than 5% of the whole intensity. It means if it is shining with 100 unit intensity, it will shine only with less than 5 units of intensity on either side. And further, if you go, the intensity will be drastically falling, right? So this is the discussion of Fraunhofer single slit. The questions can be discuss the Fraunhofer single slit with the necessary mathematics, or derive the expression for the intensity distribution due to a Fraunhofer single slit. These are the possible questions, So please try to analyze these things. And many times every day, even students are personally giving me WhatsApp messages that whether I should write the notes or not. Many times I said, please, I am not a school teacher and you are not the school students. I won't ask you to open your notes and show me it, right? But it is your responsibility because you want to learn these things. And remember, in the exam, all these questions are going to appear. There is no choice, right? So unless you practice them on rough paper or on a whiteboard or something, you cannot get all these things. That's why I have posted the notes also, right? The intention of sending the notes is not just to by heart. Just follow the class and then you try to reproduce it your own without looking into the notes. Just try to follow the regular class, and then if you want, you just have a read of the notes that I have posted. Close the notes and write it genuinely without looking into the notes. Then only you will get the confidence. And remember, in the exam, all these derivations are going to appear. So unless you have the practice, you cannot reproduce them. And one word of caution, every time I teach this, I say this to the students, but many times students neglect. Remember, physics is an extremely difficult subject unless you practice it regularly. If you practice it regularly, the final exam will be very comfortable. You can easily go through the exam. And it is not one day batting. Please remember, before the day of exam, overnight, if you try to analyze all these things, you cannot understand. Literally, derivations right? So please don't do that. And regularly, whatever I teach every day, just go through that notes. If you have any doubts, you can ask me. Even WhatsApp, I don't mind. If the questions are there, definitely I will answer, right? So please go through all these things. These derivations are very important. And if you can understand this single slit, same process I am going to apply in the next. Of course, I have already posted the slides. Anyway, once again, I'll post it in the group. So after that, you are going to have the double slit. So double slit is also going to be the same exercise. Once again, the same a dy e power I qy will be there. I will be integrating once again the same expression, but within two limits. Instead of one slit limits, I will be applying two slit limits. And if I extend it to n general slits, that is going to give me the diffraction grating, right? So first slit, second slit, all these slits are identical. So if you can understand the single slit, you can easily do the rest of the things. So I'll continue this in the next class, and sorry for extending the class because of technical disturbance, and I'll try to rectify the problem in tomorrow's class, and I'll conclude here. If you have anything to ask, you are welcome. My request to you all is please do practice. I won't ask you for your written notes, but it is your job. Please do the derivations regularly. Practice it. Then only you can go through the exam. And one more warning to you, Amma. Many people think that we have scored in intermediate 9.5, 9.6, etc. But unless you practice it here, it is very difficult even sometimes to pass the exam. I'm not really a pessimist, but let me warn you, because we have seen several times. We read from the textbook also. Yes, you are free to go through any textbook. We have already given the reference textbook now. Their derivation style may be slightly different, but content is same. You are going to arrive at the same intensity pattern, whether it is with single slit or double slit. Everything is same. Right? Okay, nobody is asking anything, so I'll conclude here. Thank you. So thank you Vasu sir, and thank you Susilata madam for helping me during the network trouble. Thank you.
Sir, is it over, sir?
Yes madam, please conclude madam.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Srinivas here, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.